You're welcome to my channel today. It's a privilege having you on my channel. It's another opportunity to encourage you to make your stand for Jesus in this very challenging time that we live in. Today we are looking at a very crucial topic, a very important topic that will help us in our walk with God. We are looking at the English Bible. We're looking at the English Bible. The story today is around the English Bible. Now, what's the actual cost of this English Bible? I bought this Bible for my children, 1,000 naira. That is less than $2. But is that the real cost of this Bible? Is that the real cost for Christians to have this Bible, that is the Word of God, at their disposal in English? Now, economists say that the cost of a thing is the alternative for gone. That is, it is what you have to let go of to have what you want. So what have we had to let go of as Christians to have the Word of God in English? Men have had to lay down their lives. A good number of them were burnt at stake. Some were imprisoned for life. Some lost their property. Some lost positions, so that you and I can actually have the Word of God in English. And one of them we shall be looking at today. Prominent among them, that I call the father of the English Bible, is William Tyndale. William Tyndale was a man that had the opportunity to write his name in gold concerning the politics of England in his days. But he gave up that ambition. He gave up that prospect. He was a man that could acquire wealth, but he gave it up. He was one who was very scholarly and would have been remembered as a great scholar in Europe and in the whole of this world. But he gave up this ambition. For what? For you and I to have this English Bible in a way that will bless our lives and enhance our relationship with God. So we're looking at William Tyndale. William Tyndale was the first person that translated the English Bible from the original Greek to English and saw to it that it was distributed to people that needed it in England. He was the first person. William Tyndale was the one that actually developed the template for today's English Bible, such that the King James Version that we hold today is estimated, the New Testament in the King James is estimated to be 83% the words of Tyndale. The Old Testament, 76% the words of Tyndale. The simplicity and the style just reflects Tyndale. And Tyndale had to eventually lay down his life. Tyndale could get married. Tyndale could enjoy love. But Tyndale gave these things up. Tyndale was running from post to pillar. He could not just stay in one place because he was hunted. Why? Because he had a mission to see to it that you and I get the Word of God in English, in a language we can actually understand. That's William Tyndale. So today we are looking at William Tyndale. So I present to you William Tyndale. William Tyndale was born about 1494. 1494 in Melksham, Gloucestershire in England. He was born to the Hitchins family. As at that time, the Tyndale family was known as the Hitchins family. In fact, he enrolled in Magdalen Hall School as William Hitchens. William Tyndale was a brilliant student. By 1512, William Tyndale had obtained his Bachelor of Arts degree, his BA, 1512. By 1515, July of 1515, he had his Master of Arts degree. A very intelligent, very, very bright student. He was a biblical scholar. And he moved on to Cambridge University. He was in Cambridge University from 1517 to 1521. And there he learned theology. And he came out very wonderfully. He was an A student, very brilliant student. He was also a linguist, very good in 7 languages at that time. He was good in French, good in Spanish, good in Italian, good in German. He was good in Latin, good also in Hebrew. At that time, good in Greek, and then good in Hebrew. That is, subsequently, he learned Hebrew then in his English, even 8, because he added Hebrew subsequently and made it 8. He was actually very, very intelligent, very good at these subjects. While he was in Cambridge University, he met some group of scholars that they met in a place called White Horse Inn, and they had meetings upon meetings, and they had discussions. They were looking at the church and its doctrines and practices, and they were not very comfortable because they were not according to biblical precepts. So they were thinking out of the box. After such meetings, at the end of such meetings, Tyndale came to a conviction. He came to a conviction that the practices and doctrines of the church should be determined by the Word of God and the Word of God alone. And also he came to a conviction that the Word of God should be given to the people in their own common language. And there his passion grew. And that became his life mission at the end of the day, because he believed he was called to see to it that his country people, the English people, being from England, to see to it that his country people receive the Word of God in their own language, English language. Very contrary to the stand of the church at that time. The church at that point held that the Bible should be left in Latin. The Bible was virtually chained to the altar. Only the priests that had not only schooled, but had been groomed in the doctrines and the practices of the church at that time were allowed to actually even learn theology and have access to the Bible. So they gave the interpretation as they deemed fit. He didn't believe it. He believes what Luke writes in Acts chapter 17 from verse 11 down to 12. There Luke commends the Bereans that they were of noble character. In fact, they were actually more noble than the Thessalonians, because after hearing Paul, they went back and examined the scriptures to see to it that what he said was true. Then they came to a conviction, to a great faith. They believed and they stood. And that's nobility. And he believes in that. He believes that the layman could also understand and develop his faith from the Word of God. He believes that the trader in the market and the boy on the farm can actually understand the Word of God. At that point, at that time, the church believed that only the priest could understand the Word of God. But he thought the contrary. So he set his mind on it. Well, he was ordained as a priest in the church at that time. He was ordained. and he served as a subdeacon for some time. He did not think like other priests, so after serving for some years, he was not very comfortable, because to translate the Bible to English at that time in the church was an abomination. The church had forbidden it. So the church was not going to allow him to translate the Bible into English. In fact, at that time, a young man was arrested and burned alive by the church. Why? Because he was found in possession of the Lord's Prayer, paper containing the Lord's Prayer in English. That was his crime. The young man was burnt alive. It was that serious, because the church at that time wielded great power. The church and the state went together. The law of the church was virtually the law of the state, and the law of the state was virtually the law of the church. And the church was very powerful. And there was only one church at that point. You couldn't question the church. So it was not comfortable for him to actually do the translation work in the church. So Sir John Walsh and Lady Walsh gave him an opportunity to become their children's tutor. So he took that opportunity with joy, because he could stay, in their premises, in their house. He could stay. They had a very big mansion. So he could stay there and quietly continue with his translation work. So he was with them from around 1521. And while he was there, he had an encounter when the Walshes were actually hosting, the locals in a dinner. There was this blasphemous clergyman that attended the dinner, and in his argument with Tyndale, he said that they could make do, that we could make do. We had better be without the law of God than the popes. That infuriated Tyndale, and Tyndale was said to have responded to him by saying, "I defy the Pope and all his laws. And if God spares my life, ever many years, I shall see to it that the boy that driveth the plow in the field knoweth the scriptures more than thou dost." And in his lifetime, William Tyndale saw to it. He was summoned by the church. He went and defended himself, and then it was dropped. But his passion only grew further, and he was loud about his convictions. He was not somebody who was actually quiet, because he believed in it. He tried persuading people. He tried sharing with people so that they could see. Now, he was encouraged to go sought the permission of the church. So he went further. From the house of John Walsh, he traveled to London to meet the Bishop of London to see if he could be permitted, because the Bishop of London had seen his translation work. He had translated the work of Isocrates. So he saw his work and he appreciated his work. Translation from Greek to English, and it was a beautiful work. So he thought that the bishop would allow him do the translation work. When he made his request, Bishop Tunstall of London, rejected it and told him that there was no place for him to do such a thing in his house. Many reasons actually were brought up for his response. There was a cardinal over him, Cardinal Wolsey, and Cardinal Wolsey was said to be a very tough man. He was a very tough man. He actually handled things with an iron fist, and he was very close to the king and also to the emperor at that point in time, and he wielded very much power, and he was against the Reformation. Anything that connoted Reformation, he stamped it out. And for the bishop to condone it, that would cost the bishop very much. So the bishop would not even tolerate it. That was Tyndale's last resort to do the translation of the English Bible in the church. He stayed in London for some time and preached there in London. He stayed with the merchants who became very close to him. And one Humphrey Monmouth was very helpful to him, financially helped him. Eventually, Tyndale knew that for him to proceed and make headway and realize this life vision of translation and translating and distributing the English Bible for the people to have access to it, he would have to leave England for another land where it was not illegal to translate. So he had to leave England. He left England for Cologne in Germany. In Germany, they were allowed to translate because then the only country the only country in Europe that hadn't the Bible in its native language was just England. The Germans already had theirs. The Reformation had started. Other people had it. So he traveled to Cologne. When he went to Cologne, he continued with his translation work. He started the translation of the New Testament by 1523. And by 1525, he was done with the translation. And he met a printer there called Peter Quintal. Peter Quintal was somebody who was doing a very good printing work. The quality of his printing work was such that you wouldn't find in England. In England then, there were only about 2 printers. But in the rest of the Europe, there were, in the whole of Europe, there were about 1,000. Only 2 were in England. The rest were in other countries. Most of them were in Germany. There was quality work. And that was where he could have the work printed. So Quintal, when he saw the prospect of the English Bible, for the Bible to be in English, he knew there was going to be good market for it. He agreed. Though he was working for the church, the Catholic Church, he was doing printing work for them. But he now agreed to do this work. And they started. They started with the book of Matthew. When they were almost done, something happened. The information got to one Cochlus, who was against Reformation, anything Lutheranism. He was against it. The story has it that he got the printers' boys drunk. He got them drunk and they went boasting that in their printing house, they were doing some work that was going to change the whole of England. So he knew something was happening. He communicated the authorities in England, and England communicated, Germany, and the local authorities there decided to raid the printing house. Fortunately, before they got there, Peter Quintal got wind of it, and they ran, picked the copies of the about to be finished New Testament, and they left. So William Tyndale had to leave Cologne and moved to Worms. He moved to Worms and the work continued there. And he met another printer, another Peter, but this is Peter Schoeffer the Younger, who continued with the printing work. By 1526, the printing work had been done, was completed, and the distribution had started into England. They had to smuggle it into England. They smuggled the copies of the New Testament into England. Some historians say that the copies were put into bags of wheat and flour and then smuggled into England. Some others say that the pages of the English Bible were put in between legal books. So they were put in between legal books and were smuggled into England. And these copies of the Bible were small copies of the Bible, pocket copies of the Bible. Some of them are still in the English Museum today. So these copies got into the hands of good Christians. And getting to the shores of England, they were just consumed. They were just utilized. They were just finished. In fact, within the span of 8 years, Tyndale was able to send in 20,000 copies of the English Bible into England. 20,000 copies of the English Bible into England. And that when the Bishop of London heard about it, he got really angry. When he heard what was happening, he really got angry. And they made stiffer laws against anybody who was in possession of the English Bible. And any bookseller that was found to sell the English Bible would be punished even by death. So they kept raiding houses and retrieving copies, but they were not really retrieving much. So he eventually made an offer, according to some historians, that he made an offer to the people. If you would not sell and you were arrested with the Bible, you will be burnt alive. But if you agree, whatever you had paid for the Bible, you would be paid about 6 times the copy. That's the amount actually for the copy that you acquired. So he made that offer. And so if the Bible was bought for £1, he would pay £6 for it. So when the suppliers got wind of it, when they got information, they decided to outplay him. They got copies of the Bible, gave it to the people, took it to him, and he paid 6 times. In other words, he would burn 1,000 Bible, but he would pay for the production of 6,000 Bibles because they used the money he was paying to again fund the production of the Bible. So eventually he was funding, they were outplaying it. So when he retrieved copies in the public square, what did he do? He burned the copies of the Bible in the public. That angered the people. While the copies were burning, the bishop preached a message against the work of William Tyndale. He condemned the work of William Tyndale and said that William Tyndale was a heretic. He said that the original language of the Bible and the church was Latin. But that's not true, because the Bible was not originally in Latin. The Old Testament was initially in Hebrew. When they were in captivity, the book of Daniel that was written was in Aramaic. Subsequently, the New Testament was written in Greek. Those were the original languages. Well, but that was what he said. And again, he said in his sermon on that day that Tyndale's work had 2,000 errors. That was baseless, and that was also very untrue, because Tyndale was a very fine scholar. Subsequently, his work was proved to be very correct. Now, he did that instead of that to discourage Tyndale, because they mounted up pressure. Cardinal Wolsey, also mounted up pressure. Instead of that to discourage Tyndale, that was when Tyndale even went on to study Hebrew. He went on to study Hebrew and then began the translation of the Old Testament. So he now moved from Worms because the hunt was too much. He was running from posts to pillar. No security. He couldn't even stay in one place for long. He would move from place to another, and that was affecting his work. So Tyndale had to leave Worms, and he went with the merchants to Antwerp in Belgium. So this is how far William Tyndale has come. He surmounted different challenges. By this time, he has succeeded in smuggling about 20,000 copies of the Bible into England, and many people are blessed. Now he's in Antwerp, hunted much more. How is he going to survive it? So we'll get that in the part 2 of this. So you look forward to it. It shall be out by next week. Meanwhile, If you find this video very helpful and of great blessing, just click the like button, drop your comment, share this video, and subscribe. The Lord bless you.